Weeks ago, people marked the anniversary of the devastation that Hurricane Katrina brought to the Gulf Coast. And we know that the levees broke there in New Orleans and all of the things, the unfortunate things that happened as a result. And it caused many people to have to relocate. And there was a very good friend of mine who family had to relocate. Her husband was from Mississippi, so they were able to move to Mississippi and to live there with him. And a few years later, she was on her way to St. Louis to visit her brothers who lived there, and she was driving up Interstate 55 and coming through Memphis. She always reminds me that it happened in Memphis. But as she was in her van with her young daughter strapped in her seatbelt in the back seat of the van, the tire blew out. And it caused the van to spin. And if you've ever been in a car that spins like that, spinning out of control, it's very terrifying. And so once the van stopped and she calmed herself down, she thought of her daughter and she looked back in the back seat where her daughter was sitting, and her daughter was just very calm. And so she asked her, well, weren't you afraid? Weren't you scared? And her daughter said, no. At first I started to get afraid, but Grandma told me it would be okay. Mm-hmm. She said, Grandma, she said, yeah, Grandma sat next to me and told me it was going to be okay. Mm-hmm. And it was a puzzle to her because, number one, her mother had died before her daughter was even born. So she never had a chance to meet her. Second of all, because of the devastation of Katrina, they lived in the lower Ninth Ward, where when the levees broke, suffered the brunt of it, and they lost, everything, except for the clothes on their back, including pictures. So she didn't even have pictures of her mother that her daughter could have seen, but when she asked her to describe the woman who said she was your grandmother, she described her to a T. There is more to the universe and more to our existence than our five senses tell us. That's why this teaching, we call it metaphysical, beyond the physical, because there's more to life than what those experiences of the five senses oftentimes tell us. And this morning I'd like to talk about something that we don't hear a lot in New Thought. It's in New Age, but New Age and New Thought, while they're cousins, they're not exactly the same. And we hear it in New Age, but not in New Thought, and that's to talk about angels. And the thing of it is that in many religious traditions around the world, from Judaism to Christianity to Islam to Zoroastrianism to the Baha'i faith to the Kabbalah, followers to Neoplatonism and many different other religious traditions, they talk about angels. And so I'd like this morning to just use a few moments to talk about angels myself, because I do believe there is more to this experience than what oftentimes we come to believe. And I'd like to suggest that there are 4 different ways in which we experience angels. And the first would be what I would call unknown angels. Unknown angels. And there's an author, her name is Doreen Virtue, has written a lot of books on angels, and part of what she does is she identifies them, and I happen to be a follower of hers on Facebook, and there was a particular post that she had just the other day that had more than 300 responses of people who shared similar stories that fall into what I call the category of unknown angels. And it happens something like this. A person might be out somewhere on a dark night and their car breaks down. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere comes another car, a person who has just kind of a serene appearance and all of that, and they get out of the car, they assist them, they do what it takes to get their car started or find them some kind of help, and then they disappear again into the darkness. And then when they start looking for traces of them, they don't find them. Unknown angels. I have 2. I have 3. Unknown angels. The second I would call would be unseen angels. Unseen angels. And those are the ones that make things happen that when we look back on them, our minds might go, doo, doo, doo. Years ago, when I was still living in Dallas, I had just graduated from college, had started my first year in seminary, and there was a relationship that I had been back and forth for several years while I was in college, and even after I got out in that summer and all of that, we kept trying to make things happen, and they didn't happen, and all of that. And so basically had lost touch with her, but the thing of it is that I really wasn't moving on with my life because there were still questions regarding this relationship and regarding this woman. And I just felt I needed some closure. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, I got a phone call from her telling me that she was getting ready to fly through Dallas and change planes in Dallas from South America. She had gone down there on a trip for the State Department, and they had been placed under house arrest in one of the countries there because they actually witnessed the military kill someone out on the street, and they were trying to, tidy things up and all of that. And she said while she was there and didn't know what was going on, she thought about me and about the relationship and decided we needed to see one another. And I was really, really torn. I really said, I don't think that would be good. I don't really want to see you. In several days she called, said, please, I'm going to be coming through the airport. Just come out to the airport and see me, and we can go from there. And I kept saying I'm not going to do it. And my last word to her was, I'm not going to be there. Well, of course, at the last minute, I decided to go. So I get to the airport, and she was going to have to come through the international gate and change planes and fly back to Washington, D.C. and all of that. And as I was standing there, and I was looking at the place where they told me they would be coming out, over the intercom was a page that said, John Gilmore, please meet your party at the C3 baggage claim. So, why are you paging me? Nobody knows I'm here. Nobody knows I'm coming. Because I told her I wasn't coming. So I go to walk through the doors that would take me to that baggage claim, and as I do, out she and the people that were on the plane that she was on come out of another entrance. And they come, and then I see her. She says, what are you doing here? I said, well, I'm here, and you have me paid. She said, no, I didn't have you paid. We just stepped off the plane. I said, yes, you did. She said, no, I didn't. You told me you weren't coming. I believed you. And then I said, well, someone paged me and asked me to come over to the C3 baggage claim, and I looked around, and there was no one standing there and all of that. But if I had not answered that page and walked through those doorways, I wouldn't have run into her. And it was in that moment that I knew that the relationship was over. But I thought about that, so I did walk her to her next gate, and then I was curious because she kept insisting, I didn't have you paged, I didn't know you were coming. So I went over to the paging phone and got the operator on the phone, and I said, my name is John Gilmore. I had a page earlier to meet my party at the C3 baggage claim, and she said, wait a minute, we don't have any record of that. And I said, well, you've got to, because I heard it as clear as day. We don't have any record of that. And so then she said, wait a minute, hold on, and she asked the other two women that were working with her, and I could hear them flipping through the pages and stuff. This was before computers were just really big. And she said, none of us have a record of a page for a John Gilmore anytime today. Unseen angels. And then the third category is what I would call unexpected angels. Some of you might have read the story. I have a good friend who's Ethiopian, and she was very proud of this story, which is in Ethiopia just a few days, maybe a week ago. There was a 12-year-old girl who had been attacked and beaten by some men who wanted to force her to marry one of the men, and they had attacked her again, and they think this time they probably were going to, in addition to beat her, to rape her, to force her and all of that, when all of a sudden, out of the woods, 3 lions showed up. And they ran the men off. And then as the young girl sat there frightened, they stood guard until the young girl's family came. And when they showed up, the lions retreated back into the woods so that she was safe and reunited with her family. Unexpected angels. And then the final category I would call would be unintended angels. Unintended angels. There's a woman, some of you may remember, her name was Peace Pilgrim. And what Peace Pilgrim, back during the 1950s and the 60s, she walked across the country several times, 4 or 5 times on foot, without any kind of money or sponsorship or anything like that. She wouldn't even ask people for food. She just felt like that God will provide for me. And she would walk back and forth first of all, during the Korean War, the Korean conflict, as they like to call it then, the Vietnam War, for peace. And she would walk. And she tells the story that one day while she was walking through the Pacific Northwest, that she was walking through a small town, and a sheriff's deputy pulled up in his car, and he saw her, and to him, she seemed out of place and kind of odd. And so he asked her what she was doing, and she explained to him, and she said, well, I don't know, but you're going to be in jail tonight until we get this all figured out. So he put her in the car, he took her to jail. And when she got there to the jail, there in the cell that she was in was a girl who was around 18 or 19 who had unfortunately gotten in some trouble. She was frightened and scared, and Peace Pilgrim comforted her, and she talked with her through the night. She reassured her that everything was going to be okay. And then the next morning, when the new deputy came on duty, and he looked in the jail cell and he saw her and he saw her tunic, he said, wait a minute, I recognize you. I've seen you in the newspaper. I know who you are. What are you doing in here? You shouldn't be in here. She said, I'm asking the same thing. So he said, we're going to let you out. She said, well, before I go, this young lady has some needs that no one is tending to. She hasn't really had decent food. She hasn't really had much time to get in contact with her family. Her hair is all matted. She needs a comb. She needs to just really wash up and get herself together and all of that. And before I leave out of this cell, I wanted to make sure that all of that happens. And so after all of that was taking place and she was assured that the young lady had been taken care of, she left. And as she continued her walk, she said to herself, now I wonder why they arrested me and I had to spend the night in the jail. And then she said she remembered a conversation with the young lady who told her that I had prayed to God to send somebody to help me. And she said, I realized that I was the answer to her prayer. She was an unintended angel. And when we open ourselves up to this universe, to the world of spirit, what begins to happen for us, we might become someone's unintended angel. But more importantly, we also get the reminder that we are not alone, that we are in a place in which we are divinely protected and blessed and loved and cared for. And in the midst of all of the turmoil that is happening out there, it's a comfort that we still have angels. Angels all around. Angels coming to us in many different ways. Angels making their presence known. Angels that in the midst of everything that might be happening, remind us of just how loved we are, just how cared for we are, just how connected we are. So this morning, I leave you with the understanding that you're not alone. Angels. Angels. Angel encounters for all of us. So it is.
So it is. How many times do I have to tell you? Even when you're crying, you're beautiful too. The world is beating you down. I am around through every move. You're my downfall, you're my muse. The worst disaster, my rhythm and blues. You got me singing, it's ringing in my head for you. My head is underwater, but I'm really fine. You're crazy and I'm out of my mind. 'Cause all of me loves all of you. Love your curves and all the edges, all your perfect imperfections. Give your all to me, I give my all to you. You're my end and my beginning, even when I lose I'm winning. 'Cause I give you all of me, and you give me all of you, and I give you all of me, and you give me all of you. Oh.
I invite you to take a breath, releasing this breath, knowing that there is only one power, one presence in the universe, and that is God. And as each of us embodies all that we have learned today, we take it in, make it our own, and we live in that truth. We give thanks for the music. We give thanks for the centering. We give thanks for all that have participated today. We give thanks for the energy that each of us has brought into this space and into this place. And as we go about our week, we know that we are to become those unintended angels for someone else on this journey. We open our hearts. We allow ourselves to be that person with that thing that someone else needs on that day. Because knowing that we are not alone, and that that very presence of oneness, and we allow it to be us, when we live from that, we ourselves become the angels that the world around us needs. We are not alone, and we are one. And so it is.
And so it is.